Cyber season is in full swing with our pals Isotope and Native Instruments.
Get huge discounts on everything from Guitar Rig 7,
Complete 14 bundles,
and one of our favorites here at the Cult and Culture Podcast,
Ozone 11 EQ. Go to isotope.com
and nativeinstruments.com
to feast on the audio goodness. Yum.
You can also get additional savings on other softwares by using the code
RUIN10.
DistroKid now also has a motherfucking app. The DistroKid app is available for iOS and Android. You can download it at distrokid.com/app/, or you can get it in the App Store.
Planet B.
Welcome to episode 10 of Cult and Culture's podcast. I am Justin Pearson.
I'm Luke Hinshaw.
We are Planet B, and this episode features Michael Malarkey, the actor, singer, songwriter, and all-around good dude. Most people know him as Enzo from the Vampire Diaries, and that's cool and all, but we're kind of getting psyched on his new show that he has coming out, Project Bluebook. It dives into the realm of ufology, which is, I mean, vampires are cool and all, but ufology is pretty rad and kind of more in tune with the things that we're into. So, so we decided to get him on our podcast. And I initially kind of, came into contact with him through, I guess, like the punk and hardcore world. And then later figured out, like, that he's, like, this very popular vampire on TV, and then kind of just filled in all the blanks. And so it's pretty rad to, like, get to hang out with them and kind of dive into, like, the, I don't know, different realms of his artistic creativity that he has in his life, and but specifically to dive into the idea and the whole, I guess, surrounding ideas of ufology and kind of linking it into his new show and stuff. But I think we get into other interesting things, like Luke gets to talk about DMT, and
Finally.
And just like, I don't know. However, I'm not sure. Like, I mean, I wasn't really expecting us to talk about, him being Enzo. It's kind of just like, that's the last thing I really wanted to talk about. But it's probably what everyone that's a fan of him wants to talk about. But
I don't even think he wants to talk about that anymore. He seems stoked on his new show, which he said he's like went from a vampire to this new agent. So I think he's ready to move on.
Yeah, and he had a new record come out and stuff too. And so anyhow, we kind of try to cover all of the bases. It would have been cool to kind of, I think, go deeper into the whole, like, massive universe of ufology, a galaxy of ufology, I guess. But it is a limited time, I guess, on a podcast. So we'll jump into this, and hopefully you guys all dig what we have to say.
All right, so we're going to just have you... I would like for you to introduce yourself. And, define what... how would you define yourself? Like, what your... Let's hear it. Your resume, I guess.
I'm Michael Malarkey. I'm mostly known for my work as an actor. I'm currently working on a new show called Project Bluebook, which comes out January 8th on History. I'm also a musician. I used to play in a couple different hardcore punk bands, and now I make calmer-ish music, I suppose. But yeah, those are the two main strings to my bow. And
Cool.
Other than that, I'm a dad and a husband, and just keep on keeping on.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's funny, like I guess like straddling between the musician and the actor thing. I mean, I guess you are mainly known for the actor thing, but the musician thing is like, sometimes people are like, but I want that, like that to be a tag or a label or whatever,
Yeah, well, there's this real need for people to pigeonhole you.
Sure.
In this life, especially at the moment, they're like, if you have loads of things that you're doing, it's confusing to people for some reason. But I think it's great to have loads of different interests.
Sure.
And I consider myself more than anything just a human being who has various different interests.
Maybe
acting just happens to be what I actually get paid for more than the music.
Yeah.
And I'd love to do more with the music stuff. But, I just got off of a big European tour, and I'm working on my next record. So I definitely do both things pretty relentlessly.
That's pretty rad. Okay, so I think you had explained your shift in your main acting roles from being a vampire to now you're being a detective, right?
Air Force captain.
Yeah. Okay.
UFO detective.
That's like the best kind. I mean, detectives are pretty rad. Anyhow, the UFO part's the best. So we can edit this out if you want, but you had called it your big boy role now, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose so. I mean, I started off training at Lambda in London, the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, and mostly did theater and did a lot of big roles for theater. But you come over and you do TV, and it's really bitty, and you're often, a lot of your stuff is left on the cutting room floor. The space between all the brilliant work that you're doing is lost.
But you shine through somehow, obviously.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think I have a good work ethic, and I'm good with people. I got 3 rules that I'd like to abide by in this industry or any industry, and I think it works across the board. And it's number 1, deliver the goods, be a boss of what you do. Number 2, don't be a dick, which most people
are.
Yeah, and that includes not talking shit. And for me,
that's where I fuck up.
Yeah, well, we all have our moments. But what talking shit is basically participating in a negative activity to feel positive.
Sure.
And people just get used to doing that and feeling good about themselves.
Yeah.
By trashing somebody else.
Yeah.
Like I used to rip on certain big pop artists. What the hell? Why are people eating this up? And then you kind of realize how the industry works. And it's all about hype and publicity. And if these kids are doing well, then fuck it, man. Good for them. Number 3. What's number 3? Have fun. Have fun. Which is actually the first. I think that's the most important thing. If you're having fun doing what you're doing, that shines through and kind of trumps everything else.
That's interesting. So I think the shit talking thing's interesting because I started figuring out it's way radder to talk shit about myself and what I've done, and then because then it's kind of funny, and then it's like no one can criticize you because you're like, I already criticized myself.
It's very English of you. Yeah. There's
some things I've done I'm like, fuck, that sucks so bad.
Well, it also that it's kind of the reverse thing of rule number 2. By trashing yourself, you're allowing somebody else to feel the same and go, oh, okay, I don't have to pretend to be any better than I am.
Sure.
I'm allowed to show that I'm intimidated or scared or.
And if I don't trash myself, Noisy will do it or something.
That's right.
Yeah. and then 3, have fun, because I think a lot of times like I see artists like even like ex-bandmates of mine, which I don't need to name names again, but like they take themselves so fucking seriously, and you're like, dude, it's not like, I don't know how to. I mean, where do you even like? I don't know. It's interesting to see that. You have to be able to laugh at yourself.
You do, and you see a lot of these. Well, we're talking about acting, older actors who you can tell when they're not taking themselves too seriously, and they're doing certain roles. And I mean, I think Tom Cruise does take himself pretty seriously. But then we saw Tropic Thunder, and we were like, hang on a second.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Who's this guy?
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty cool move.
Yeah. It is interesting to see that shift in people's stuff.
And it's important, especially when you're a bit older. Michael Douglas started taking a turn and playing these more humbling roles from being like an action star. And that was when he started doing his most interesting stuff.
So you've gone like the opposite way, because you went from like playing in hardcore bands and now you're playing like singer-songwriter stuff, and you're on, well, I guess UFO shit's pretty weird, but yeah. So I mean, do people trip out when they figure out like, oh, he's like his roots are in hardcore or whatever, punk?
Yeah, well, expectation is a bitch, a lot of people assume things when they see you on a certain network playing a certain kind of role. And I mean, I still meet people to this day that just know me as Enzo from the Vampire Diaries and are intimidated to meet me, thinking that I'm actually a vampire and I'm going to prey on them or something. And it's like, no, I'm just a semi-decent human being who's just getting by like you.
Yeah.
But it's a weird setup, you know, because people are, what was I going to say? I forgot.
Well, it's probably like when you see a musician. I mean, I remember growing up and like seeing musicians and thinking like, there's no way I could do that. There's no way I could be like, they're not normal human beings. They're like, they're up sub. And then I met the Cramps and they were like, come here, little dude, like you're cool. And I was, I was like 12 and they were like hanging out with me and treating me like a normal person. I was like, holy shit, they're regular. I mean, they were not regular people by any stretch, but they were like they were like approachable and not like, gods
dicks.
Or whatever.
They weren't dicks.
Yeah, they weren't dicks, but they also were like, like human beings,
Well, I think the most important thing is that musicians and artists and people like that who people idolize, you can't get by being a dick. And you're also, I don't believe that musicians should be role models. I think that's a trap. And treating all of these people like Ed Sheeran, Ariana Grande, or whatever her name is, as role models is a mistake. Justin Bieber, or whatever.
If I was your boyfriend, I'd never let you go.
They're just people, man, and they're young.
Yeah.
And they're gonna fuck up.
I know, and I can't wait. but even like with Bieber, like when he would do stupid shit, I'm like, fuck yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Or like when Britney lost her shit and shaved her head, and like I was like, that's cool.
It's
like
the most punk rock moment we've had in a while.
Yeah.
Like,
it makes me
Elvis getting arrested, that mugshot is one of the most famous pictures of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Poor Elvis.
Anyhow, so that's crazy. So people think you're a real vampire. That's kind of rad, I guess, because a lot of people wish they were vampires. So
I suppose so. But yeah, it's that expectation, isn't it? And I like to keep them guessing. It was important to me after leaving that show to do a 180 and do something completely different. And why I got into acting was not to play the same shit over and over again.
Sure.
Or some people get locked into a certain casting, and that's them. You see them doing the same character, the same accent, the same personality for every role they do.
Yeah.
And for me, I wanted to explore loads of different terrains. And
So what you're saying is there was no more vampire shows to get on?
not for a while. We'll see. Maybe like if we do like a Bubba Hotep style thing, like in a nursing home, like old vampires trying to get off the blood.
That would be great. There you go.
Rehab center for vampires.
There is that like that sort of like, what is that fake vampire movie that came out? It's
Something in the Shadows, that one?
Yeah, it's like a British movie, I guess, and it's like
I think that's the one. Yeah, I can't remember what
it's like
called.
a Spinal Tap-esque kind of thing, but they're vampires. It's really good. I recommend it, I guess. So I don't know, man. Let's get into this like the new thing, because this I'm pretty I'm into like obviously like UFO stuff, but like weird conspiracies and things, and like I'm pretty psyched that like, well, for one, there's been a shift in the last, I guess, like obviously in the last decade, but probably the last 2 decades, where they're like just pumping out more stuff to like in that realm of ufology or whatever. And so, and I always like, especially like touring, I always listen to like Coast to Coast with Art Bell, now with George Norrie, and it's always like, which is interesting too, because they cover vampires and then they cover UFOs, but they also cover like the JFK assassination and Marilyn Monroe's death and things. So like I'm always,
maybe it's all connected. I mean, I actually, just to segue a little bit, I heard a rumor at some point that all the presidents must know something about this, right? And there's that interview with Barack Obama who was like, I can't tell you about that. Yeah. Where it was just insinuating that he knew that there was something going on.
That says something.
That's right.
Yeah.
By not saying something, saying something. And JFK as well. There was some rumors of Marilyn Monroe finding out about some UFO stuff and died afterwards. There's all these weird, suspicious deaths that have happened surrounding this stuff. I mean, the character I'm playing, he's based on, the character's name's Captain Michael Quinn, but he's based on Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, who was the head of Bluebook at the time. He's running the project on the ground. And he wrote this very famous book about the phenomenon, which everybody should read who's interested in it. But he also died suspiciously of a heart attack, 38 years old, pretty healthy.
Yeah.
And was basically leaving it pretty open, out of the 12,000 cases, there were hundreds that were still left unexplained. And unexplained meaning credible witnesses, that had no weird psychological shit going on, and they still couldn't explain what was happening.
So the show, I mean, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but does it take place after Roswell?
Yeah, so it's 1951, and I think it spans around 1951, 1952, season 1. And basically this is a time when there were mass sightings happening. Everybody was seeing UFOs, and they had to find a way to quell this public hysteria that was going on at the time. The Russian threat, the nuclear war, pending nuclear war that was going on. Everyone was freaking out already.
Sure.
You had this added thing, this added interstellar, extraterrestrial thing, and they basically had to put a dampener on that. So Bluebook was, in a sense, the first fake news campaign, in a way.
It's called fake news.
Which is something we're all very familiar with right now.
Yeah, we solve a lot of problems.
It's set in the 50s, so the costumes are amazing. We're all wearing hats and suits, and the girls' dresses are incredible. So the look's cool. It's got this really noir-esque kind of quality to it, and I think it'll appeal to that kind of audience as well. As well as we have the government conspiracy thing and UFOs. And every episode is like a case file from Bluebook that people can look up afterwards, do their own research, learn a bit more about the actual case.
So the fake news comment, like you're saying, like Bluebook was created as a thing to like sort of like ease the public, or like to tour the public or something?
To control the media, in a way. They were there on the ground. They were the first there on the ground. And they oftentimes hastily would jump to conclusions if they seemed like they could be, if it could be like a weather balloon. They were like, okay, well, if it could be, then we'll just say that it is.
Sure.
If it could be a flock of birds, then let's just say that it is.
Sure.
And you still had people who, there was oftentimes cases where you'd have multiple witnesses seeing the same thing and saying it was a ship.
Yeah.
But still, Bluebook was saying to the media that it was something else entirely.
So in the show, your job is to cover everything up.
Close the cases. Yeah.
Wow.
And so, it's just a little more backstory in the show. We follow Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who's a very famous astrophysicist and ufologist, played by the wonderful Aidan Gillen, great Irish actor. And we recruit him. I recruit him in the first episode to work alongside us from Powers Above, and just to help bring more scientific proof to these debunkings.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I wonder, like, how that really, I mean, maybe but like, where who was, like, was it like the Air Force or the Army or who, like, the Secretary of Defense? So they're like, all right, you gotta squash this. Like, we gotta hide this shit.
Yeah. So there's this infamous secret organization called the Majestic 12, MJ12, which is various different heads and generals, and they're the ones who were basically giving me my orders to do all this stuff.
Okay.
And this is almost aside from, I mean, it was reportedly created by President Truman, but a lot of this stuff was kind of outside of real government. It was a secret organization. I mean, you have also in recent news all these trillions of dollars that have gone to weird places we can't trace, and then there's also, if we want to go this far, we have the whole Pentagon crash that happened. There wasn't even a plane, and who blew up in those explosions? The accountants that were actually tracking this money. So they basically, in a way, if that is a conspiracy that it seems it could be,
sure, have
covered their asses. But it runs deep.
I mean, I wonder, like, how far do you really think all this stuff goes? I mean, there's with all of the conspiracies, I mean, it just seems like, I don't know, a lot of times, like, you probably could be like, well, okay, that was a UFO, or that was some crazy military aircraft that we don't know about yet, I mean, because...
Or one of our own. I mean,
sure.
There's a lot of theories that point to the fact that after Roswell, we found some kinds of alien technology, which led to lasers, which led to the internet, which all of a sudden we had this massive incline of technology happening, suspiciously since that time. And, I came into this project not a skeptic, but somebody who's always been interested, but just not thought one way or another about it. You
Yeah.
know? And doing all the research for this has really, really made me as close to a believer, I suppose, as you can be. You know, there's all these witness accounts you can read. There's NASA footage. There's so many things that really point to the fact that these things are real.
Sure.
And you know, it's not a question of if they're real for me anymore. It's a question of like, what are they? Because they're there and they exist. And you know, the thing is now there's just so much crap footage out there that people have to wade through. You know, a lot of people know how to doctor film, but there's enough solid footage out there that you can make your own opinion, I suppose.
Yeah. I wonder, like, if it started, you know, like with like the Nazis, how they were like trying to deal with like the occult and stuff like that, you know, and like also like, you know, kind of interested in stuff like UFOs. I mean, I wonder if that was like.
Well, you also had, I mean, just to segue, we have an episode called Operation Paperclip, which is based on exactly that. And we had all these German prisoners of war or whatever that we ended up employing and having them make rockets.
Yeah.
You know, there's very strange things going on behind the scenes. But that's actually one of my favorite. It's a good episode. That's episode number 4 or 5 or something like that.
I wonder how it's going to be like in, you know, another, like, whatever, 40 years or something, you know, and what kind of knowledge we'll have. And then like people, there'll be a TV show and like, I don't know, like your kid will be the actor or something. And, you know, be like the Haldon Collider, you know, like whether like that guy like showed up in the inside of it. Like, do you know about all that?
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I
like
don't.
I guess like do you know about it? It's like, he's like a Swiss or I guess a Swiss like scientist, and they have this they're trying to create a black hole, and inside of their like facility some guy like turned up and then he disappeared, you know, and they're like, what, you know, and, I mean, you can research it online, and like I think it talks about like Mountain Dew and all this weird shit, you know, it's like what. So I mean, I wonder, like, again, is it like just like some fake thing, or I mean, I don't know, like, because someone's coming up with these ideas. It's like the concept of like, you know, I guess like early humans couldn't understand what certain things were, so they created angels, and they're like, oh, an angel, but like that could easily have been just like people don't understand, like, because it took like the, you know, like with the natives, it took like shamans or whatever to say like, oh, those are ships, like sea ships coming in to like invade us, and but people couldn't see them until like someone explained, like, those are like, that's a thing, like you couldn't see it until the shaman pointed it out.
That's a really good point, because you know we are viewing the world and space from our own, you know, minuscule version of science and intelligence, and we're seeing everything in you know, as light, you know, and but we've learned, if anything, like that there's all this gray matter and black matter, and everything is not as it looks like on the tin, you know, until we figure that out.
Other
I mean, once
dimensions.
you look even into radio waves, you all of a sudden see all this other motion happening that seems to be invisible, but there's a lot of other things at work in the universe that we still have yet to discover. And I think we've, in a way, as much as we've progressed technologically, we've regressed in well, I guess spiritually. I mean, I know that word's thrown around in a weird way, but you know what I mean by that, you know, in our connection to the earth, and to each other, our, you know, ability to, I think we have an ability to be more telepathic or clairvoyant or whatever that has been squashed over the years. And I think partially it has to do with science. You know, we've become obsessed with breaking down the atom and pigeonholing everything, you know, to call back on what we were talking about before. And maybe to our discredit.
But then there's like things like organized religion. So like all of a sudden, if the world goes, or governments or whoever officials are like, oh, there's alien life forms, it's like, well, how does that factor into like Christianity? Like, okay, your religion's thrown out the window because the whole thing is wrong. You know, there's like all these other like life forms or whatever. And I think that probably is the biggest fear that maybe, you know, so-called Western civilized countries or people or whatever might have.
Well, that's in a way why the church came out somewhat recently and said, yeah,
there is it,
because they're trying to get ahead of the game. You know, it's like taking the piss out of yourself first. Like we talk about, you know, it's the same kind of thing. It's like, hang on. But it all has to be the same. I mean, I think if anything, our history's been written in a certain way to control the masses. History is written by the victors. You know, you go to a different country and you read history, it's a totally different thing. So it's you know, I think if some more kind of disclosure were to happen about all this, it would blow a hole in our perception of reality and history. And it would bewilder a lot of people. And I think that's partially why this thing was created back then, was to control that from happening.
Sure.
And it still is. You know, we're still being fed information based on what, you know, news channel we watch. You know, I can't watch Fox News. I can't watch CNN. For the same reason. You know, it's like I don't want a completely biased take on what's going on. And I also just don't want to fill my head with all that shit.
Sure.
Going back to how you were talking about connecting on a human level and how science kind of like took us away from that. I've smoked DMT quite enough to, like, I've connected with aliens and have spoken with them without talking, you know, it's just, I can hear what they're saying, and they're just staring at me. And I've done enough DMT
like the
with
tall whites?
Somebody. They're tall. There's different ones out there, but as far as the farthest I've gotten, because every time you smoke and like let yourself go, you kind of go through different phases. You'll find there's this guidance like girl that's above you hovering, and then she takes you to a certain level, and then there's these other like it's hard to explain, but there's other creatures that will take you to this next room, and then this next room, and then there was finally this point where I got to where there were two. It was almost like I was at this gate. There was two on each side of me, and just talked among themselves and then talked to me. You could hear everything. No mouths were made. I don't think they had any mouths. And they just decided I'm not going through that fucking gate, and just fucking pushed me back. But my point, not if I had a point or not, but I think like how you're saying like technology and science kind of took us away from that spirituality, whatever. I think humans are just using the science and technology wrong, because aliens are more using it to where they're building or like expanding all the knowledge of like the universe, and we use it for like greedy reasons and to gain money, and we lose touch with that rather than like, because swear I've smoked even, and it bugs me because people are gonna hear this and laugh like, oh, you're just on drugs.
Of course, but that's what you're up against
but I've
in this
smoked
conversation.
DMT, you know? With, say like with you, I've smoked it with Andy.
Yeah.
And we've passed it around and swear like looking at each other and have fucking watched ourselves disappear. Like I seen him disappear and he's seen me disappear, and we were like talking to each other the whole time, and then just snapped out of it, and we're like, dude, we really, like, you could hear almost what I was thinking. Like we saw the same things, we're almost talking to each other, but never said a word.
Well, this is the thing with psychedelics in general, you know, and LSD tests back in the day. You know, it's all of a sudden this stuff that was extremely potent and mind altering and expanding was cracked down upon and blacklisted, and I mean, marijuana only recently has become legalized. But it's another thing of control of the masses. We want you to be a cog in the wheel. We want you to be a part of the machine, to make money and pay us money, and boom, and then die.
Well, the thing with,
I mean, that's a grim outlook, but I mean, look, we're born into this world. We don't have a choice. And so, you know, I think about, you know, as a dad, I would love to have had my son grow up without a television, without having any of that influence, but it's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible. And you just have to, you spend a lot of your time just doing random shit, either for money or to just get by. And there's no time to sit around and think about the universe like in a genuine way. So you go online and you look up what it's about, written by somebody else. You know, the great thing about the shamans is that's their bread and butter, is they are connected, they're in touch. They're not going to a desk job and trying to be a shaman at night, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if like all the, you know, not to sound like a coastal elite or something, but like the midsection of America, like I wonder if they all just, I mean, I don't know, you know, give them DMT or LSD or whatever, and then be like, all right, now like go back to the voting booth.
you're fired.
Yeah.
You know, like,
What do you think now?
yeah,
Just spray it over the fields in a plane, like Agent Orange.
yeah. Damn, where do we go with? Oh, so it's weird because it's like our we fill in the blanks with something. Someone tells you like that's the answer to this. Like the answer to like life is or the way the reason why you have to act a certain way is because you will have to repent and and God says this and that. But then it's either like little things like people like talking about like reincarnation and afterlife, and it's like. And I always trip out on that, like thinking like there's no way that there's an afterlife. Like when my dad died when I was a kid, I was like that's it, he's dead. He was cremated, and like the whole thing was a bunch of shit, and it sucked, and that's it. But then I started thinking like the concept of information stored in DNA. So like that's your past lives, because people, I'm recently like met this woman who I guess would help people get in touch with their past lives, and we kind of talked a little bit about it, and she sort of. That's where she makes her living. So she wasn't like as, I guess like, like clear about it or like opaque about it. Or she was just like she was a little like hesitant to kind of open up about it. But she was basically saying like you're right. Like you have information stored in your DNA, and that's your past lives. It's not that like we have this like sort of like sort of like Bible-esque version of like whatever it was that happened before this life, and then there'll be another one. But it's like, yeah, because your DNA is going to be passed on to whatever and stored in other ways that we don't even understand. Like there's data in all of our DNA. So
that's right. And we have no idea. And I think we're also just going back to what you were saying earlier. We are always looking elsewhere for the secrets of existence and life, as opposed to looking in. Yeah. And the universe is within you. You know, it's as above, so below kind of thing. And we forget that. We're always trying to get tips from other people, and it is important. Some people can give you pointers to steer you into a different path, but people are so unable to sit still and listen to themselves, and you have most of the answers if you are able to listen, I think.
But people are too arrogant, and like narcissism is like...
Well, and everyone has ADD. No one sits still.
Yeah.
Transcendental meditation is like an extremely... psychedelic experience for people who know what that's about, and you get all the answers you need when you go into that place and find a sense of detachment from this world in a positive way. Yeah. You have to be able to detach yourself from all the crap that's going on. And I mean, one thing that happened to me, this is not a DMT story, but after Trump was elected, I was like, all right, that's it. Turn off the news. And I didn't watch it. I haven't watched it since, actually. I'll tap in from time to time just to keep abreast of what's going on. But I realized I was just so angry, in the lead up to that and everything. And it was affecting my life. I was just pissed all the time. And by switching it off, a lot of people would like point with finger at me and be like, that's a cop out. You're part of the problem or whatever. But what I was doing was like finding my own peace without needing to be connected to everything else that was going on in order for me to get by, And I think that you need to take those moments of pause and reflection in order to be able to evolve personally. The space between things is a very sacred space, and it's when you can actually allow a new kind of vision or whatever to come in so that you can act upon it. And I feel like there's this real need for everybody to be involved in raising banners and fighting all these fights, and it squanders your energy. And I think it's important to realize what your particular plan is before you start spending all of your energy on a bunch of on other people's
You almost don't have
shit.
time these days to let yourself grow.
You don't. The world doesn't give you time.
person.
You're in high school. They're already talking about which college you're going to go to and spend the next 4 years of your fucking
And
life.
everywhere you're on your phone, and it's telling you what to think, or pick a side here. This you're gonna feel, laugh at this, hate this, love this. So it's right. You don't have time to actually like get to know yourself even at some points.
And half the people, I didn't go to college. I went to drama school, but half the people, I dated a girl in New York for a while, and I remember going up to that university, which will remain nameless, but I'd never seen so many confused, angry, intelligent, and drunk people in my life who were just like pissed off about everything. And I was like, man, what is even happening here? And they didn't even know what they want to do, half of them, you know? It's like, well, why are you spending so much money? Why are your parents spending so much money to send you here? You should, if you just work in a coffee shop, you'll probably learn more than you're learning here, you know? I learned more working in a record store.
I mean, if you stick it out and go through the paying for art school, like, you're going to just have a ton of debt. You drop out and just go experiment and do some crazy weird shit that's not supposed to happen, and then all of a sudden, like, then you could be successful, or whatever success is. That's also like arbitrary,
Being at peace, I suppose.
Sure. But yeah, I've been tripping out on like the whole not detaching, or like, but like removing yourself from like the negative vibe, because I like, it's like when let's say like there's there's a protest, and you go and there's like neo-Nazis, or they're having a rally, and you go there to like, obviously, like, yeah, fuck neo-Nazis, like, let's go there and like combat them, or do you it's like you're anti the anti, it doesn't make sense necessarily. Like, you probably would have that energy could be spent better going and doing something positive that would actually impact someone's life.
That's my standpoint.
Instead of fighting with a bunch of fuckheads, like.
Well, I think, by doing that, and man, it feels good. It feels good to fight.
I totally would like to smash a Nazi's face in, but
yeah, totally. Yeah. But
it's not going to change the world. It's going to make that guy hate everybody else.
It's the long game, and I definitely believe that as much as things are fucked up right now, that there are a lot of small little sparks of change happening, and it's our job to focus on those and build them into little fires, and rather than participating in hate. I don't take any particular stance or religious stance at all, because I feel like it's just saying I'm part of this team, and you close yourself off.
Sure.
At my shows, I music shows, because I tour around Europe, and there's many different types of people that come to my shows. And, I always say, look, I don't care what you believe, leave it at the door. We're here to have a good time.
Yeah.
And hopefully they'll gain something from that.
So like what you're saying, without talking shit, I guess, but like the lowest common denominator of like what someone's interest in the arts would be like, oh my God, there's this guy who is a vampire on a very popular TV show, and now he's in a band. I'm gonna go see his band. And they probably don't give a shit about music, and they just go because it's like a thing and it's popular, and they should just go. And I guess if you were to go and be spouting off like a bunch of propaganda, they're gonna be like, fuck that, but instead, like, I mean, who knows, maybe that one random person will find this podcast and like, then they can actually hear like a more of an in-depth, I guess, conversation on like why and the hows and the who's, then like, fuck Trump,
That's
like
right.
that. It's like, yeah, everyone can say that, like, you can wear that banner, but it's not gonna go anywhere.
It doesn't mean anything anymore, though.
Yeah.
And people don't even know why they're saying it anymore. I just don't like the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, well,
great.
That's not a fair comment, because like there's some terrible shit that's going on, and don't get me wrong, I'm not a supporter of that, but yeah, I think that's my point exactly. Is like, I think that the way that I've found I can make a change is by accepting everybody, and hoping that the people who have opinions of hate, that'll just slowly ebb that away. I mean, who knows? I'm not a fucking savior, and I'm not trying to say that, but that's just how I choose to live my life, and I hope that resonates with some people who are fans of what I do.
I mean, I guess you've been like, you were a bad vampire, and now you're a bad detective, right? So,
great detective.
Well, bad as far like a bad guy, right? I mean, you're
well, not
depending
so
on
much.
how you.
It depends on how you look at it, but
Okay.
he definitely starts out pretty skeptical and trying to close the cases down. He views the astrophysicist
so
guy.
he gets changed.
Well, yeah, they kind of have these shared experiences, and they actually see some things together, and the series ends on a real cliffhanger.
An anal probe.
A real, yeah. Well, yeah, kind of. But yeah, it's not quite a bad dude, and he, they both have their own things that people will connect with and think that's pretty cool. My character is very much a master purveyor of the human carnivore. He reads people well. He understands psychology. He knows when people are bullshitting, and there's that element of it where he'll leave an interview and he'll be like, guy's full of shit. And
Well,
the doctor's like, how do you know?
So he's a
I was
good
like,
detective,
you
but
see
not
the way
a
he's
good.
moving his hands when he's doing that,
Yeah,
when he was looking at me and blah blah blah. That's not a spoiler or anything, but there's a scene where that happens. But and the doctor obviously has his extremely intellectual ways of justifying things, and they both end up finding a mutual respect for each other and very much become a team. So they're both the protagonists of the show in a way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, going back to that. So like, what kind of research were you suggested to do, or did you just go do it on your own, or?
Yeah. You're usually left to your own devices for these things. I actually, it's funny because I was on a European tour, and I got cast and had to cancel a few dates and fly out there the next week to start shooting.
Whoa.
And I was like, okay, I haven't done any research because I didn't even know I had the part, So I had to do some serious cramming. And I was definitely I'm still researching. Like,
Sure.
I've definitely gotten the bug. I'm pretty obsessed by all this stuff now, and it's completely changed my opinion about this world and universe.
Before I forget, can you suggest something like for people to like check out? Maybe in relation to the show, but also just in general about ufology.
Yeah, sure. So the captain that my character's based on, Ruppelt, wrote the what was it called? The report on unidentified flying objects, and that goes into so many of the Bluebook cases. It's a must read for anybody who's interested in the phenomenon. There's also loads of really great documentaries on Amazon that I've been watching. There's a lot of crap ones.
Oh yeah.
But there's one, I Know What I Saw, which was recommended to me by my showrunner, which delves into a lot of these accounts. And the thing that's harrowing about all of it is, no matter what you think, when you listen to some of these witnesses talking about what they saw, just on a straight up, do I believe them kind of thing, you're like, I fucking believe these guys.
Yeah.
They don't want the notoriety. They wish this would all go away. And there's a lot of them are like simple country folk who are like, man, I don't want anything to do with this. And yet no one's believing me, and everyone's saying I'm a liar and like ruining my reputation in town. And it's pretty fascinating. I mean, I think this is just a trough of stuff you can look at. But yeah, this is a starting point.
So then, I wonder like, what was not allowed. You know what I'm saying? Like how, I forgot you were telling me about the writer of that book, right? That they changed it after he passed away. Like
they changed a whole chunk in certain words and things. And
but
this
I mean,
is an ongoing thing, like the NSA documents and stuff, they've been released to the public, but everything's blotted out except for like 5 words. So yeah, we have the documents, but you don't know what the fuck they say.
But I mean, so then you make art, let's say your TV show or someone makes a film or whatever, and then you can just discredit it as like, oh, it's science fiction or whatever. But like, it does have, I mean, the show is based on something true,
Yeah,
so.
well, this is the thing we're up against, is whenever you do anything that's historical fiction, you're going to have people to go, that didn't happen like that, but look, there was no cameras or bugs in the Bluebook offices. I mean, we're talking about Queen Victoria or whatever. You can only surmise what situations would have happened. And obviously you're going to have people that are like, nah, that's not how it went down. But yeah, we take certain liberties. They were not really on the ground solving cases necessarily at this degree that we are portraying. Hynek actually had worked alongside the government before on something else, as opposed to being a new dude. There's a few little discrepancies, but the main point is that we want to entertain.
Sure.
And secondly, to inform. And History's also doing a little follow-up piece after every episode, which delves into
oh, cool. I like when
each
shows do that.
particular case. We're doing a podcast with Sci-Fi, which will be on after every episode, where we delve into more of the backstory and things. So,
is Sci-Fi related to History Channel?
No, it's
interesting.
But there's a big following for this kind of stuff there. But the most important thing is that it's appealing to a bigger audience who potentially haven't been aware of all this stuff going on, and will inform them, at least to give them a starting point to find out more about it, because it's one of America's biggest, the world's biggest untold histories.
Sure. I mean, I wonder, like, it as an American thing, it seems kind of interesting to kind of look at it like that. Like, you know, like, yeah, okay, why would UFOs just come to America? It's just, that's another, like, sort of like narcissistic kind of, like, they're here
all
for,
over.
yeah,
International.
yeah.
I mean, there was many global cases. You know, there's big ones where, you know, ships have gone down and people have come out, like in various different places. The countries escape me, but, you know, Mexico is some of the biggest sightings, almost the biggest places in Europe. There's England. There's a very famous one at a nuclear base, American nuclear base there. There's all this, actually, this activity around nuclear bases, too.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Well, the atomic bombs, too, is when that's when everything sort of came about. So that would make sense as far as like a like a scholastic measure. But, like, it is weird that it just all of a sudden was like a thing to, you know, like that people talked about.
Yeah.
I wonder what it was before that. I guess just people couldn't see it, you know, or they didn't know to look for it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Once you say there's things out there, people start looking. I mean, I know I do. I stand out on my balcony, on my porch, and I'm just like,
especially on tour, like in the middle of nowhere at night. I'm just like, I'm constantly seeing shit. Like, what was that? You know? And I mean, and then I always write it off. Like, that was probably some kind of weird, like, government ship that I'm not, you know, or if it is a UFO, it's like it's part of the government too.
Yeah.
That's another, I guess, spin on the.
Yep. There's many different theories, and they're all plausible in certain ways.
It's crazy too, because I've been to as close to like Roswell as you could get, and like it's there's a vibe, man. It's weird how like sketchy shit seems, and like I don't know, like just ridiculous stuff that kind of like, you know, we stop for gas and you're at this gas station and like I don't know, like just the things that happen, like some blind guy trying to get a ride closer to Roswell, and you're like, what the hell? Like, are you really blind or what? You know, and then you go inside, and the clerk at the gas station's like, she says she's a vampire and has no idea what like Area 51 is, and you're like, what? Like you live like within like 10 miles from this thing, you know, or whatever, you know, and you're a vampire, like what the fuck, you know? So like, I don't know. I wonder like.
Well, it's a real thing, man. I mean,
they're just all actors.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's good for business, man. I mean, Roswell. If you've been to Roswell, it's a pretty. I mean, I'm sorry if there's any listeners in Roswell, but it is a pretty grim place.
Yeah.
You know? But around there, you know, I have a friend who I've met recently, who told me about also coming face to face with an alien out around that way, and I can't talk any more about that, but, you know, you have these people who are super real and compos mentis who are saying these things, and almost in a way of like, I don't know if I should tell you this, but yeah, that happened to me. And, you know, the more of those things that pile up, you know, the more you really realize that it's about the big picture. You know, every little case you can pick apart, but once you step back and see it like a magic eye, you remember those magic eye books where you like cross your eyes slightly and all of a sudden the picture pops out?
Yeah.
That's what this has felt like for me, is over time I've gone further and further back and seen the quantity of things, and it's just popped out like a magic eye. But
it's weird because I like meeting. I guess I've met people that like I knew this kid that was like, my parents are not human, you know, and I'm like, what? And you know, and then like I met his parents, and they said the same, that he wasn't.
He's not human.
No,
we're human.
They're saying that he's not like, like I don't know, weird things like that. But then when I was younger in high school, I met this guy that was I guess he was a private investigator, and he was investigating a student in our school, and so he became friends with the drummer of Struggle, my first band, and would like hang out with us, and like all these things happened. Where like, okay, so the first time he came to our rehearsal, he had all these files of UFO stuff, and I was like, man, I don't know, like, you know, with the typical photos of like a UFO in the air, like over a mountain, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I, you know, believe this. And it was, but there was little things where like, you know, like, so we started practicing, and he like stuck all these like electrodes to his chest and laid on the floor, and we're like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm trying to like get the energy, you know, or some bullshit. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay, this guy is full of it. But then sure enough, like the next rehearsal, he showed up with an Uzi, and we're like, why do you have that? And he's like, oh, I got all, you know, I do like, I work for like these other organizations, and like, you know,
The gun.
yeah.
Right.
And it opened up pretty big because he at one point like drove half of our band to Santa Barbara to play a show, and I wasn't in the car, I was driving in the other car, but they got pulled over for speeding, and the police pulled him over, and in this trunk he had a bazooka, and but they didn't arrest him, and he has, I don't know how or why, but he basically like worked for Greenpeace, and like they would go blow up like whaling ships and stuff. So I mean, he was on another level, but like he definitely had these like, he's like, you don't even understand like technologically what is out there. He's like, let me just say like all of this shit's real. And I'm like, dude, maybe this guy is for real, you know? And he would bring like he brought this laser that you could go like up on a mountain and point it in someone's car or house, and you could hear everything. And I was like, whoa, okay. And this is when I was 16, so whatever year that was, a long time ago. And so like that, my mind was like, whoa, I'm so naive, and I'm like only in this little box. Like there's so much shit that we can't even comprehend. So like when you do meet someone, they're like, this happened to me. You kind of have to like give them credit or take that at some face value.
Absolutely. I mean, if that story was told to me before doing all this research, I probably would have written it off a bit.
Really?
Been like, all right, yeah, you know, or your story as well, you know, but it's dot ellipses.
So let's talk about your music a bit.
Sure.
When are you gonna start a hardcore band again?
Let's do it, man. We got a studio right here.
Yeah.
And I still got my scream. I do miss that. So my band was called Shady Side. That was the main one I was in for a number of years. We like recorded in Nashville and toured around the Midwest. But you know, during that time, my band would write like a song a year. There was a lot of pot being smoked, but I was like writing so much lyrics. I write so much lyrics, but I was just raring to put these to songs, and it was like taking forever. So that's why I taught myself how to play guitar.
Wow.
It was like so I could be, you know, bring stuff to the table a bit more. And I've ever since then, you know, like played, written music. While I was at drama school, I always had a guitar. Whenever I've been traveling, I always have it with me, or a little keyboard or something. And yeah, the stuff I've put out so far, you know, my first full length was a couple years ago, I think, Mongrels, and then Captain Solitaire came out this year, which was like a 3-song little EP.
Yeah.
And you know, it's mostly been finger-picking style, you know. I'm very influenced by like Leonard Cohen and Nick Cave, Tom Waits, those guys. That's my like trinity of artists that I like.
Yeah, those guys aren't too. They're not
too bad. Yeah, some of them are a little bad, but but I'm at a point now where the sound's kind of shifting a little bit, and the last thing I released, Captain Solitaire, that song in particular, kind of is a nod to the new direction slightly. You know, it's got a electronic, kind of organic electronic drum sound to it. It's a little moodier and less singer-songwritery, and I feel like there's this trap with when you're kind of a singer-songwriter who has an acoustic guitar, and this expectation of telling your own stories and wearing your heart on your sleeve. And fuck that. That's not where I want to go with music. And I've found that I'm more interested in the theatricality of it now, and telling other people's stories, or, you know, talking about stuff in a different way that's not just me whining about shit, which I don't consider my shit whiny at all, but like, you know what I mean. So I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. I'm very excited about all the demos I've made, and I'm at a place where I'm taking that space between the silence to allow the thought in of what to do with it. You know,
it's kind of like when Tom Waits released Bad As Me, I think was the one where it was like, I think that was what it's called, but it was like so big and mean. It was like nasty, you know, and like it wasn't like, I don't know. For me, I felt like he was obviously like pretty. I think he has a lot of like experimental aspects to his music, but you were like, where are those drum beats coming from? Like, what is that sound? It sounds like destruction in a time signature, you know, like it's
pretty much. I mean, he was like taking an old dresser and beating it with a bat in his garage.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is, like, what was his influence? Like, you know, the ongoing war in Iraq, you know, like that's there's so much like just nasty, like sort of just fuck you to the administration and the government and war, and it was like, it was cool because it took like the singer-songwriter aspect away and made it like this really weird, like avant-garde. I mean, I guess he's always kind of been like that, you know, like where like I guess someone like, let's say Leonard Cohen, like you really wouldn't see him like pissed, like bashing on shit, you know.
In some ways it was that trio of records, you know, Swordfish Trombones, Rain Dogs, and Frank's Wild Years, where all of a sudden it was like, I forget what that guitarist's name is, incredible, but really part of that whole sound, but where he just went into this weird, almost carnivalesque land, and it just blew a hole in, because the old stuff was very beatnik, him and the piano, which I love. I absolutely love that stuff, but I love even more is like Rain Dogs, for instance, which for me was like the one of the albums that really changed my course of songwriting and my life, really.
It is weird to like take people, I guess, I mean, I don't know if you want to call them singer-songwriters, but like I remember like kind of discovering David Van Ronk.
Oh yeah.
And you're like, there's like some of his material that's just, you know, because he was singing about the Vietnam War, and you when you kind of hear that emotion in it, where it's like it is nasty, and he's got something really to say. It's not about like heartbreak or, I don't know, like the more simplistic things that we songwriters, I don't know what the fuck I'm writing about, you know. I mean, I know what I'm writing about, but I'm like, it's for me, I could never write about like heartbreak. I could write about like the end of the world, you know, or like I don't know, like like
the end of the world.
But like
that's easy.
A relationship, whatever, like that doesn't matter. And another thing is, I mean, it is a bigger picture, because to me, like, I think like I'm assuming like someone like, you know, Dave Van Ronk or Tom Waits or whoever, like, or I mean, like, Leonard Cohen's more like this. God, I don't know. I don't want to discredit some of his work, but like, it is like like love stuff, you know,
Poetry.
like heartbreak, you know, and like that's things like, that fuels a lot of the shit that I would like to write about, but like, not that it's easy, but like for me, it's like I feel like it's natural to like write about something larger, you know, because
that's what is good and works for you, and that's what you've been doing, and that's awesome. And I think the thing is, we've all got our little niche, and I don't want to call it a pigeonhole. That's not what I mean. By niche, I mean like you find your drive and just fucking put that on steroids and do that.
Yeah, sure.
Then you're servicing yourself and you're servicing the world by being yourself and writing about what naturally comes out. You know, and I think we put too much pressure on ourselves to fit into a mold, or to I need to write political songs, or I need to write a love song. It's like, nah, dude.
Or going back to that idea of like, you didn't go to college. When you're in college or even in high school, everyone's like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, oh fuck, I'm not even sure what I'm gonna eat for dinner tonight, you know, let alone like what I'm gonna do in 4 years. And whatever, I'm so glad that I didn't take that route. I would be an asshole right now, you know, like, or you know, be stuck at like being an asshole. Like you wouldn't have been able to like just go like, fuck it, because I did try to go to college and I kept dropping out because I was like, I'm gonna go on tour and I'll go back to college next semester, you know, and then I was like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna keep doing this.
You just gotta get going and start working. You know, there's a quote from, I forget who, some artist, Matisse or somebody, or Picasso, I don't know. It's like, inspiration comes while you're working, and I couldn't believe that more. You know, I feel like when I'm writing and working on a song, stuff just happens, and if you embrace the every little part of it and the fuck ups and everything, all of a sudden you're building something that you never would have imagined you were setting out to build. You know,
sure.
I'll never go say I'm going to write a song about this or I'm going to write a song about that. It always starts with, you know, usually the music and kind of what lyrics start to fall out when I'm freestyling over top of it, and then I'm starting to kind of put together this like moth-eaten dress of a song, and all of a sudden I see, you know, what it is. And then I'm like, oh, and then you get a renewed sense of inspiration when you try to formulate it and put it into what came out of your subconscious. You know? And for me, that's how I work.
Well, I wonder, like, because there's always like this weird shift that I see in people where like, so for me, like I grew up like playing music and just kind of being criticized by everyone, like my parents, but also like by my peers and by, you know, society or like people at high school or whatever. Like everyone's just like, you suck, you know. And I was like, all right, cool, fuck you. I'm gonna do it even gnarlier now.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, it gave you energy in a way.
I think so. But I do see like a lot of people like, you know, they'll like kind of hit me up and be like, what do you think of my record? I'm like, dude, don't ever ask. For one, I don't want to have to be like, I don't want to lie, you know, and I'm probably
it's an
not,
awkward position,
you know, and I'm like, I don't like a lot of shit. Like, I don't know. But I always say like, just do whatever you do. And like, you should love it. And you shouldn't care what anyone thinks. Cause I mean, fuck, even like when, you know, when Luke and I put out the Planet B record, when we were done, I was like, oh, it's not that good. I don't think it's that good. Like this sucks. But it made us like do it, the newer shit, like even better. And like you step it up. But I feel like a lot of people are like, hey, what do you think? Is this cool? Like, I'm gonna go on the. I don't know. It's a trip.
People need validation.
It's a weird thing.
And you should self-validate. You know, people need to learn to question themselves. Like, is this resonating with me? If so, then it will resonate with others. If it's genuine.
A lot of those people need that, like they ask you, hey, what do you think of this? But in the head, they're already like, this is so good. This is so.
Yeah, just tell me what I already know.
Exactly. That's what they want to hear.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm always like,
if you're going to give your record to somebody, you have to be able to accept, you know, the other side of that.
Or don't give them the pressure of
Yeah,
saying, like,
don't
I need
even
an
bother.
answer.
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
here it is. Don't tell me what you think. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I'll just assume it's bad. I don't know. Like I mean,
Yeah.
I was told like my first band was garbage. The second band was garbage. You know, and then I started realizing like, oh shit, what I do sucks. I probably should try to figure out how to do it better. And that was on my own. But like, I never asked someone like, hey, what do you think? But it was like the times where people said like, it's bad, and I'm like, okay, this is fucked up. I gotta try to.
Well, most people say something's bad because they don't see it out there right now or whatever.
Maybe.
I mean, that's one part of it. You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it is just shit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
oftentimes, you know, your criticisms are often your biggest assets, because people, you know, that's what makes you you, by saying, oh, it's a bit like, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And that little thing, you know, sometimes you got to cultivate. Like, all right, you hate that part of it, I'm gonna fucking do that more.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do it louder, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it better.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of great artists have totally gone down that route. I mean, even fucking speaking of painters again, but like, you know, was it Van Gogh, who was poor as hell up until he died and became famous way afterwards?
Yeah.
You know, where people didn't understand or connect with it at the time, and now all of a sudden his pieces are going for millions. You know.
Or if you're doing well, like let's say Elvis, you just become like this fat piece of shit, you know, like hanging out with the president.
Fuck,
and
well, that
whatever.
whole situation. I mean, I played Elvis for a year in the West End, actually,
Yeah.
on stage.
Yeah.
We talked about that,
Yeah.
didn't we? Yeah, and that's another thing where people all have their own interpretation.
But you were young Elvis, at least.
Young Elvis, 1956. Yeah, I didn't have to put any weight for
Yeah.
it. But you know, there's one point that I remember specifically where I'm playing "That's All Right, Mama." And I look down, glance down the front row, and there's this old bird with her husband. She like crosses her arms, leans over to him, and because there's music playing super loud, she has to almost shout it. She's like, "He's too short."
Wow.
And it fucking crushed me at first. And I was like, fuck, man. Yeah, I am. Like, probably by an inch. Damn it. I'll wear some platforms. But instead of doing that, it actually kind of empowered me a little bit, because I thought, you know what? If we dug up Elvis and stuck him on a stage and played for this exact same crowd, she'd probably be crossing her arms and shaking her head about something else.
Yeah.
You know, everyone's got their own interpretation of who these icons were.
Yeah.
And history in general,
Sure.
to go back to the show. And it's not our job to exactly be. I mean, you know, Johnny Cash, Joaquin Phoenix played him, I thought, brilliantly in Walk the Line, because he
Yeah.
wasn't impersonating him.
Yeah.
He brought so much of himself to that role, and it was super dark and super grounded and
Yeah.
invested. And I feel like for me, playing this character now, I did all my research and really tried to incorporate a lot of that, but it was more important for me to find what I connected with and to create my own version of this character that can actually live and breathe, as opposed to worrying about connecting all the dots and ticking all the boxes.
Sure.
You know? There's a time and place for that. You got to do the research, but if it connects with you and you bring something of yourself to it, it moves from just a decent performance to something that's a little more interesting to watch, I think. You know.
But maybe it's like maybe it's the character or the subject, because like when you think about something like Johnny Cash, where he kind of like, I don't know, it's interesting to look at him in comparison to like, I guess, the legacy of like Elvis, you know, because like Johnny Cash was like pretty. I mean, Elvis might have been badass to some extent, but like Johnny Cash never let up, you know. And even at the end of his,
he was more of a rebel, man. Like,
sure, but like he, you know,
up.
but then like that motherfucker was taking like 9 Inch Nails and like making their song better than that ever was, you know. And you're like, dude, that says so much. That song is incredible. That cover, you know, and like
I love all of his American recordings.
Yeah,
really
but
great
the fact that he can do that is awesome. Where like, you know, then there's like Elvis, like towards the. I mean, I guess maybe it's like you can chalk it up to being addicted to drugs or whatever, but like that performance where he was like in that white jumpsuit and he's kind of like
comeback special.
Yeah, and he's like like mumbling and shit and like doesn't sing it right.
I got you fighting somewhere, I'm depressed.
Is that the right
Oh wait,
one?
no, maybe we're talking about something else.
It's pretty grim. I'm like, what the fuck? This was like televised, and there's parts where he like.
Oh yeah, it is the comeback.
Yeah, and he can't sing right, and you're just like, dude, that's so insane right now. Like that it happened, and then his legacy went on. It seems like that kind of shit should have just tarnished everything.
Well, nowadays in this current climate, it will.
Oh, it will.
I mean, everybody that we idolize and look back on
once they
would
fuck
be
up,
castrated right now.
I know.
They'd all be in jail. They'd all have so many accounts of like sexual misconduct on them, you know, drug addict, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, we live in a weird time where you can't make any misstep or you're fucking crucified. It's a very strange time to be alive.
Yeah.
It's kind of intimidating, you know. I think with everything, it's gone too far. It swings back, you know. That's what keeps me feeling hopeful about what's going on now, is that I know that it always swings back. So hopefully the lessons that we're learning now, which are really good in a way, you know, we shouldn't believe everything we're taught, that we're shown on the news.
Oh,
you know?
sure.
We're starting to question more what actually is going on, which even for the last administration, people were still a little bit more like sheep. Whereas now I think we're maybe creating a bit more of a mindset of like, hang on a second.
Yep.
No, I need to know. I need to know for me. And that's one of the positive things I can glean from the current climate. You know, I've a lot of people I know who were a lot more closed-minded, and now they're like, hang on, wait, I don't know what I am. Am I a Republican or a Democrat? Well, it doesn't fucking matter, dude. What do you actually think? What do you think? Fuck the teams.
And
you know?
then make it come full circle. It's like, there's aliens. Like, who gives a shit if you're a Republican or Democrat? Like, shit is way bigger than that fucking stupid, you know.
That's right.
Minuscule crap that people are fighting about.
I know.
Like, oh, you're the superior race, white supremacist. Well, joke's on you because there's a fucking alien race, and you're just an asshole.
Gray supremacy.
That's an interesting thing too. It's like, God, can someone just come out with the alien thing? Because then we can get rid of like a lot of prejudices. We can fucking get rid of white power shit. You can get rid of religion, or like organized religion. Like, fuck it, make it saying things so much radder.
Well, it all has to be the same. You know, I mean, I believe. I grew up and studied a lot of religions and cultures, and I'm very blessed. My dad's an anthropologist and teaches the classics, so I was exposed to like the Bhagavad Gita and like all these things when I was younger. And what I believe is that every religion has to come from the same source. They all were brought at a certain time in history when the people could understand certain things, and it's basically essentially the exact same thing stemming from the golden rule, you know. Do unto others what you would have done unto you.
Yeah.
And at the core of it all is love, but it's become completely bastardized and torn into sects and just becomes about these team antics. But at the end of the day, if there is a God, it's the same one. Like, I hate to break it to you guys, but it is the same. But it all has to agree. Science and religion have to be synonymous, one and the same. You know, I think it's not a question of whether there's a God or not. It's like, I think that's irrelevant. There just is what is.
Or we're just not capable of actually understanding what is the truth, or what is the. Maybe that doesn't even exist. It's beyond our capability. I mean, I think humans only use like a small portion of our brain, like
10% or something like that.
Yeah. So like, let's unlock the rest, and then like, fuck, maybe we can get our shit together.
Yeah. Fucking get along.
Maybe. I don't know. So, where do you? I mean, that could be a good way to wrap this if you want to see if humans can get our shit together. Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, we covered quite a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that Donald Trump is the only president the MJ-12 hold stuff back from?
That's a good question. I mean,
We ain't killing this guy.
You saw his hair flapping when he was, getting on Air Force One that one day. Maybe he's got maybe he's actually an alien. Who knows?
It's called fake news.
Planet B.
So there you have it. That was episode 10 of Cult and Culture's podcast. I would like to thank Michael Malarkey for coming on our show. I'd like to thank all the aliens, the Pleiadians, the Greys, and whoever else.
Also, don't forget to watch Project Bluebook on the History Channel Tuesdays at 10 o'clock.
And lastly, hit us up on social media, on Planet B's Instagram or Facebook or 31G's stuff or whatever, and get at us with your your UFO stories. Tell us if you have any crazy experiences or things you want to share, and we can kind of engage more on this topic on social media and kind of try to rope more people in. And also be sure to check out all of our past podcasts, which you can access on 31G's SoundCloud and on iTunes podcast under 31G. And there's 9 other episodes for you all to check out if you haven't heard them yet. And thanks for listening. Thank you.
Like